Hello again, everybody. How are you this evening? It has been a while. Andy Campbell here with Sean Fitzgerald, the two of us co-hosting Rinkcast Live for all you Chicago Blackhawk fans out there. Early April, Hawks are falling apart or have fallen apart. What could have been a fun podcast talking about playoffs and matchups and things like that. Here we are again, Shawnee, with another year of talking about how dismal our Chicago Blackhawks are. And how are you today, buddy?
I'm good. The Blackhawks are dismal. I will give you that, but I think there is some hope on the horizon.
I like it.
I have some hope for the future. We can get into this, but I'm curious to see what Kyle Davidson will do with his first draft. I have some optimism. Hopefully, the moves he made, trading Brandon Hagel for the 2 first-round picks, like we talked about. I just think he's done some things that gives me hope. So
excellent. Love the optimism. Yep. Love the optimism. So before we get going here, a quick shout out to our sponsors. If you see down below, Puck Hockey, PuckHCKY.com, all in caps. If you use the Rink, all in caps discount code, gets you 10% off a t-shirt. And if you spend $100, you're going to get another free t-shirt, which is cool. Anyway, they got some good swag on there. So check it out. Good stuff. Just the two of us tonight. We're really excited to have you here, though, and to talk about the Blackhawks. And first of all, Shawnee, before we get going, the hat. Sean, we always talk about the hat game. That's a hat that has become an instant classic to Cub fans. But talk about it. You finally got one, man. Love it.
I finally got a City Series Wrigleyville Cubs hat with the light blue brim, the blue hat itself, the white C, and the red star of the Chicago flag in the center. I will be donning this hat tomorrow at the friendly confines, probably with a winter hat over it eventually, but I am going to opening day tomorrow at Wrigley Field. So not as cool as where you're going.
Yep. Frozen 4 in Boston. I got my Michigan hat. I'm all ready to go. My father's in town taking my son. Go Blue. Playing a strong Denver team and that Minnesota team, that Michigan team. A lot of the guys you're going to see in the NHL for a long time. So it'll be getting a nice first glimpse at that. Well, to the Blackhawks and to where they are right now, the first thing we want to talk about is Marian Hossa. Big night for the Big Hoss. He's going to retire a Blackhawk. He has committed. They're going to make it public. They're going to have him sign a contract there. They're going to do a big heritage night for him, probably something long overdue. I don't know if any of you were watching the game where Jonathan Toews a few games ago got his stick in recognition of his 1,000th game with the Blackhawks. But the ovation for Marian Hossa when he walked out there and to see him and back in the building and what he meant to this club. Johnny, how does this make you feel?
I got goosebumps, like just what you were saying. Like when the Toews ceremony was going on and Hossa got the biggest ovation, that was really cool for me to see too. And the look on Toews' face that Hossa was there. Marian Hossa is just I think Blackhawks fans don't understand. Maybe we hadn't comprehended it at the time, but now that he's gone and everything, like he was just such a great player, such a great two-way player, which is Marian Hossa in itself. He was a great scorer early on his career, and then he changed his game to become a great two-way player. One of my favorite Marian Hossa things, just when always he'd skate with one hand on his stick and have his other hand literally shielding the defenseman off. He was that strong. The last Hawks jersey I bought, the last Reebok Hawks jersey I bought was a Marian Hossa jersey,
right? Because
I had to have one. So
it's hard. I mean, what a flawless career, and I almost want to know nobody's a perfect person in life, but as far as character, people and people you want to be around in Class X, Marian Hossa is right at the top of the list as far as athletes are concerned. And this is also a guy, he came in the league highly touted. He was a 12th overall pick, the 1997 entry draft. It's also, he needed to bounce back from some very unfortunate circumstances, one of which was it was his inadvertent high stick that caught Brian Berard in 2000, I believe, that rendered Brian Berard legally blind in one eye and changed the trajectory of Brian Berard's career. And I remember Hossa being very affected by that. And, and his play moving forward. And I know that the rest of his season that season wasn't his best. And then when he got out of Ottawa, when he went on to the Atlanta Thrashers, that's when he had a 100-point season. Then he was at Pittsburgh. Then he signed that 1-year deal with Detroit. Just missed the cup. Everyone thought, he's just going to sign with Detroit. And, I remember when he signed with Detroit and people were like, he signed for 1 year, $7 million or something of that fabric. And everyone's like, oh my God, what is his agent thinking?
He was cup hunting. Yeah.
He was cup hunting. Maybe you could say he was cup hunting, but then he did something special. And Shawnee, you've said his contract with the Chicago Blackhawks, the greatest move of all time by any Chicago sports franchise. What do you say?
I think it has to be. It just because he was the missing piece. You think about it, the season before the Blackhawks went to the Western Conference Finals, they lost 4-1 to the Detroit Red Wings. They bring in a veteran two-way forward who not only can he play on your top line, he played on the power play, played on the PK. Like, he was such a leader for that team down the stretch. And I think, like, he delivered. He helped them win the 3 Stanley Cups by far. The best things about the lockout shortened year in 2012-13 was that Marian Hossa was able to heal up because he had the shoulder surgery that year and came back. And he overcame the blatant Rafi Torres, like, trying to kill him check. Like, when Marian Hossa retired due to his skin condition, like, it was a dark day in Chicago just because he was so valuable to that team. He did so much for them. And I know he was never going to win the Selke trophy. He was never that highly regarded. The highest he ever finished in his career was 5th. But still, like, great two-way player.
That drives me crazy. Sorry to interrupt you, but
somewhere
along the line, face-off percentage became this ultimate Selke criteria.
Yeah.
And so basically the Selke award is for a center right now, and that's it.
Yeah.
And if it was for a winger, I mean, the last Selke winner that was not a center is Yuri Lehtinen in like 2003 or something.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's to your point, Shawnee, and I'm sorry I cut you off as I always do very well.
You're totally good.
One of the best defensive players of his generation, of his era, and he got no credit for it, really.
And the fact that he transformed his game, like you said, he was a 100-point scorer. He only focused on scoring. And he transformed his game to be a complete two-way player, which was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, when he shut it down following the 2017 season, that was the season that the Hawks were the best in the West.
Yep.
They were swept by Nashville in 4 games, and everyone said, okay, well, they'll be back. And this is Stan Bowman got out there. This is unacceptable, yada, yada, yada. The Hawks will be back. And then Hossa retires, and the team has never been the same.
Nope.
Ever. And everyone looked at, the most important players of, the cup teams, and they all want to go Keith, Toews, Kane. Hossa is right in that conversation. If not even ahead. You could say he was more important in those latter years than, well, I don't know. Actually, that's tough. than those top 3. But, first ballot Hall of Famer, as he's been inducted into the Hall of Fame, just did, which is great. And miss him terribly.
Yeah, I miss him terribly. Like, I had gone to my first game in a couple of years, and I thought about wearing what jersey, and the last several games I'd worn a Marian Hossa. I decided not to wear it because I figured now that it's retired, I definitely will wear it the next time I go, just because you can't go wrong with Marian Hossa.
Yeah.
And he's just, he was, like you said, like, he was so vital to that core. He like solidified the core. I think like Rocky Wirtz at the time said that he was his favorite player, like the best free agent signing. They gave him that huge contract, which if he didn't have that skin condition, he probably would have played out its entire contract.
Played out the whole deal. He left at his peak.
Yeah, he was in that great a shape. He was like a robot. They said some guys even said like he was like a robot. He was just that in shape, that in tune.
Yeah.
He said the funny moment, I think it was after the 12-13 Cup, where he said, "Don't tell my wife I haven't slept in 24 hours or something," because they've been out partying so much, and his wife was still overseas. She hadn't come over yet.
I mean, he's a 26 goal guy in his final season.
Yeah, 26 and 19.
And I mean, it was one of those, he could play on any line. He can play with anybody. In 2015, in that Cup run, that line of Jonathan Toews, Brandon Saad, and Marian Hossa was the best in hockey.
Yeah.
It was best in hockey. I mean, it was unbelievable. And that was the line that probably made the difference against the Lightning, because Hedman was owning Patrick Kane that entire series. So, well, hats off to Hoss, and so glad that the Hawks are doing this. Like I said, or I've said before, not a huge fan of these heritage nights or the final lap or the final skate or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
But anytime they do anything for Hoss, I'm up for it.
Anytime he's in the building, I think a couple of years ago they had him signing autographs at Rockford, and I think it was like there was standing room only seats being bought just to get a glimpse of him. So the city, the organization, the city, and everybody who followed the Blackhawks knows what he meant to him. And I think he's I'm waiting now that he's officially retired. Hopefully they'll get around to start, whether they put a banner up that says the core and they put all their names on there, or they retire their numbers or something. They've got to make that right and put it up in the rafters. Whether he's on a banner that says the core and it's got Keith, Kane, Seaves, Crawford, and him on there.
Yeah.
So
I'd love to see 81 in the rafters, big time.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
To the gatekeeper, Jeff Osborne, co-founder of the Rink, who just wrote in, "Long live the host." Amen, brother.
Yeah.
Amen. Long live the host forever. He's the real deal. And
the boss.
I don't know. I mean, we might not see another of his fabric with the combination of hockey character. Just a great guy. Yeah. He lived in the building adjacent to my parents, and my uncle was in Chicago, and he was trying to get in my parents' garage, and ahead of him in a car was Marian Hossa, and he had no idea, and the car kind of stopped, and Hossa was behind him, and he couldn't get in the garage. He's like, "Oh my God, there's a resident here." He's panicking. Big Hoss jumps out of the car, walks around the car, and goes, I'll let you in. You're good, buddy. And my uncle goes, as starstruck as anyone could be. So,
that's really, really cool.
Yeah. And so anyway, hey, hats off, Hoss. Great stuff. Excellent job, the man. And so now let's move on. Let's move on to Jonathan Toews. It's Shawnee and I tonight. We won't keep you folks too long, but we have a couple topics and a couple scenarios with the golden smoothies. And then we do want to touch base maybe on a little bit of a prospect watch, or, Lucas Reichel has been called back up. We'll see how that goes. But at any rate, Jonathan Toews. So Jonathan Toews has now played 1,001 NHL hockey games. What an honor. He's done it all with one team. I think that says something. Captain as a 20-year-old, staple of the core. And I remember, there were times in 2013 to 2014 where, analysts and hockey experts were saying if you were going to start a team with one guy, Jonathan Toews was often picked as the first one you want to.
Team Canada, Sidney Crosby, when they asked Toews if they could make Sidney Crosby the captain. Like, that's how much respect Team Canada had for Jonathan Toews.
Yeah,
and that was an all-star team.
Right. No, I mean, it was great to see all the guys come back and congratulate him. Unfortunately, in Jonathan Toews' latter years, it hasn't gone the way that he had mapped it out. He's 33 years old now, I believe. He's shown a lot of mileage, and he took the entire season off last year for illness-related reasons, COVID-related reasons. There are rumors all over about what was going on with him. Some really poor rumors, actually, that I'm glad no one ran with. And to that end, I mean, his best days are behind him. That much is clear, regardless of what he says in an interview, saying, I still feel like I'm about to, there was that interview where he said, I feel like I can play the best hockey of my career still. That's what my heart is telling me. His best days are behind him. He's a $10.5 million cap hit. He hasn't had a great year hockey-wise or publicly, for that matter. His interviews, he's been disenchanted. Some of his comments about Stan Bowman were not very well received following the scandal that rocked the Blackhawks. So, Shawnee, riddle me this, man. Jonathan Toews has 10.5 after this year, $10.5 million cap hit left. What's to become of him with the Blackhawks and in his future?
So I think next season, Jonathan Toews is going to finish out his contract. I don't think there's any scenario where the Blackhawks can trade him for anything of value. And I don't think he's got the no movement clause along with Kane. I don't think he wants to go. But I think after his contract expires, I think he will look at free agency. I think he's going to explore, at least talk to other teams, consider his options about playing someplace else. Like you said, some of the disenchanted comments, he made a comment after Brandon Hagel was traded that I don't understand. Like, he's a good player. I guess that means anyone can be traded, something to that effect. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, was a total lack of understanding of where the franchise is right now. If Jonathan Toews wants to, they wanted to hold on to past glory for far too long. The guys on Puck Soup said it, like they should have rebuilt the 3 years post Cup as opposed to 3 years past that. So we're what, 5 years past, and now we're starting to rebuild. So Toews has got to take stock of, what does he want to do? Does he want to finish his career as a Blackhawk, or does he want to try to go win someplace else? Mm-hmm. And ultimately, I don't think the market's going to be that great for him out there. I mean, like you said,
it'll be low. Yeah. Now, to your point, I mean, I think so. When his contract's up, he's 34 or 35. I can't remember what it is. I don't know how many more times he will enter concussion protocol next year. There's that. I mean, I don't. He's taken a beating because of how hard he plays, and while we all appreciate that, love the guy, but he also seems like he has a kind of personality that would prefer to burn out than walk away. So I think you're right. I don't think the Blackhawks will have two players that are big marketable names that people are going to say, are they going to trade or not? Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane. You might be able to, both of which, if you try to move one of them or they agree to be moved, you're going to have to eat hefty salary, which I believe you can only do for two players in 1 year.
Right. Yeah.
And so the market for Toews, even eating the salary, I think is going to be difficult to trade him.
Yeah.
So to your point, he will most likely play out the rest of his contract.
Correct. Yep.
And if not, and even if there are callers, he has to want to be traded.
Right.
There's that too. He's earned that right, and he's also, it's baked into his contract. So I think there might be, at the end of the 2023 season, 2022-23 season, if there are those, who are out there who are looking for a third line center for a playoff run and want to just limit the amount of ice time that Jonathan Toews have, and you can get him at $2 or $3 million, I don't see that as impossible. Not at all. But a lot of it, we still need to see this play out, though.
Right.
Because you can say Patrick Kane hasn't shown any signs of slowing down, because he hasn't. You can't say that for Jonathan Toews. You can't. No, he took last year off. He's taken a beating this year. Can his body take another full year of hockey and then still be a marketable asset?
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if there are those around him that are just saying, Johnny, hey, you're going to the Hall of Fame. You got 3 cups. You got a Conn Smythe. You got a Messier Award.
You got how many gold medals?
Right. Yeah. Your international career, World Juniors and the Olympics is well decorated. Is it time to start thinking about the second half of your life and your health?
Right. What you're going to do post hockey, or are you going to go for the league off, work for. I mean, like these stars, they can like work for the Chris Pronger work for the league office. Like after his playing days were over, like there's still places and things that you can be involved with the game, just not playing.
Right.
Or
maybe
he worked front office or something like that. I don't know, but for Johnny's sake, I hope he really considers all of it because we were talking about it pre-podcast here about Steve Monkel McMichael and just how what happened to him post playing, like the toll that it took on him. I don't want to see Johnny like that.
No.
Like it's sad to see your heroes and stuff end up like that. Like that their bodies have paid a tremendous price for what they've done. Brent Seabrook, for instance, paid a tremendous price for the amount of times he just told his body, "No, I'm not going to heal. We're just going to fight through this." And now he can't play anymore. He's probably going to have like hip issues. Probably going to need multiple surgeries and stuff like that. And I don't want that to happen to Johnny. So hopefully, I do think though.
Go ahead. Yeah.
When he tests free agency, he's going to see that there's not really a market for him. And I think he re-signs with the Blackhawks for like a 1 or 2 year deal, does his victory lap, and then retires.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
I mean, if they're still rebuilding, the Blackhawks will be rebuilding for a few years. So at the end of his contract, they will still be rebuilding. And I mean, if he wanted to come back on the cheap, I'm sure there'd be a spot for him.
Yeah. He's still a marketable asset. He's still marketable fan base.
Right. I mean, he's taking a pay cut regardless. That's happening.
Yeah.
We know that. It's so hard to answer the question. I mean, we're posing the question on the podcast. Will Jonathan Toews retire a Blackhawk? And what's so hard to forecast for that because we don't know what next season will look like for him, on or off the ice. I am going to go ahead and just say yes.
I'll say that too.
And just plain law of averages, because again, I mean, it's just so hard to know if he can hold up for another year of hockey after 2023, and he will be a Blackhawk for the entire season next season. Unless they exercise some sort of buyout, I don't even know the mechanics behind that, and then let him walk. They can't do that.
Buying him out, I think, hurts them just in terms of carrying over the cap hit, and especially if you want to move other players and retain their cap hits, you don't want the extra buyout. The buyout's confusing.
Yeah, it can be. So, well, I mean, we're all rooting for Toews. I mean, it would be awesome if he came back next year and had a lights out year and started fresh and started healthy. And it's like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden, Toews has more ammo and he's got a 20+ goal season. And then all of a sudden he can go somewhere and someone looking for someone to, I mean, you're going to need centers in the playoffs to win faceoffs and to play defensive hockey. And he can do that. He can do that. I mean, there will be a team, if he's healthy, that could sign him and say, yeah, we want you to play a penalty killing role and a third line role. And that's it. Unlike these last few years in Chicago where it's still do everything, Johnny.
Right.
And
as we saw, I saw firsthand a couple Mondays ago, he can still, every once in a while, he can still push Father Time back and go and take the puck to the net and make a great
that was awesome.
Score. I was behind that net that when he scored.
Oh, were you really?
Yeah, that's awesome. Where my seats were, 117. So
that's amazing.
So if a team was looking for, like you said, like a third line defensive center who occasionally could chip in some offense, then Jonathan Toews is your guy.
Yep.
And if they shelter him and don't play him 17 minutes a night, maybe only plays 15 minutes, or you cut his ice time down and you don't have him on the PK or the PP, like you could preserve him more because, like you said, the Blackhawks expect him to do everything: power play, kill penalties, stuff like that. He's overexposed.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, we shall see. Time will tell. So the other big topic, that we want to touch base on right now is Patrick Kane, number 88. Fan favorite, awesome hockey player, legend. Might go down as the best American-born player of all time. So Enzo says he is right now. Ed Olczyk will just be right out of the gates. Yeah, this is the best American-born player we've ever seen. And no, folks, I don't want to hear Brett Hull. Okay, I said American-born. Brett Hull was born in Canada. Remember the criteria, American-born. Brett Hull's a dual citizen. He decided to play his international hockey for the USA. Yes, best American-born. Let's just be clear on that. Because every time you say American-born, someone brings up Brett Hull.
I think Mike Modano.
Yeah, Madonna's still in there. I mean, he still could be the top.
Yeah, that's who I think. Michigan native.
Michigan native. Played in a more point-producing era during his heyday in the early 90s where there were multiple 100-point scores. And we can do stats on the two of them. I think Modano is still probably 100-plus points ahead of Kane in the race for the all-time American-born point list, I would imagine. That said, Kaner has an MVP. Kaner has a Conn Smythe. Kaner has 3 cups.
Modano has none of those.
Yeah, he's got 1 cup.
That's right. My bad.
99, but he doesn't have, those individual accolades. There was no time in hockey where someone said Mike Modano is the best player in the NHL this season. Never happened.
True.
But those arguments aside, Patrick Kane is probably okay. So going into this offseason, there were rumblings before the deadline. Is this actually possible? Could Patrick Kane be moved?
Yeah, teams checked in.
Teams checked in, and I would too. Because I think if he and Kyle Davidson sit down this summer, and KD says to him, Patrick, we're about to rebuild. What do you want to do? Like, if you want me to try to move you, I can move you. If you want to play out this season and test free agency, fine. You'll always have a home here. We'll work it out if you want to. That's how I would imagine the conversation going. The big question is, I think Kyle Davidson was also right not to have this conversation around the trade deadline with Kane, because if you're a GM, I think the market for Kane, the return on him will be much bigger leading up to the draft than it would be at the deadline.
Yeah.
So, Sean, does Patrick Kane get dealt this offseason? Now, he only if he wants to. It's up to him. No movement clause. Does he get dealt? What are some scenarios? What do you got?
I think it's a 60-40. I think it's 60-40 he gets dealt. So 60 he gets dealt. And I think the reason I keep it at 40% as he stays is because a lot of people have made reference to in the media and beat reporters that he really values his legacy as a member of the Chicago Blackhawks, and he wants to achieve all those records, be like the all-time points leader, be the best American, player, like you said, and do that all in one uniform. Some likely trade scenarios, though. I think if Kyle Davidson was going to trade him, the obvious scenario is the Buffalo Sabres, in my opinion. The Buffalo Sabres have 3 first-round picks coming up this year. In 2022, they have theirs. They have a conditional pick. If the pick is in the top 10, they'll exchange it with Florida. But if not, they get their first-round pick. And then they have Vegas's first-round pick if in the top 10. So they have the potential for 3 first-round picks. They have 3 second-round picks in 2023. And they played Buffalo when I was there. And Buffalo, despite the record, I think they're a team building towards something. They got Alex Tuch when they traded Jack Eichel, who Tuch is a pretty good player. Rasmus, I can't pronounce it. I'm going to butcher his name. Their defenseman, Rasmus Dahlin. Everyone has talked about how his defensive game, he's become more of a shutdown defenseman as opposed to just like a points producer. Yeah. And they're a young team on the rise.
But are they win now? Two questions though. Are they win now, which I'd imagine if 88 is going to waive, he wants to win now. And secondly, would Patrick Kane really waive to go to Buffalo after 2015 and everything that happened that summer in his hometown and being falsely accused of sexual assault? Yeah, and I don't know. Only he knows if he has a bitter taste in his mouth of that city after that whole thing.
But I mean
that was wild.
It's home, right? Like he grew up a Buffalo kid. He'd be the prodigal son returning. he'd be the big draw. The team is like, if they get like Craig Anderson said, this is the most excited he's been coming to the rink in years. He loves coming to the rink. This young defense, all these guys are building towards something. Like, they've got a young team. I think Kane puts them in. They'll be like, people say they'll be better next year.
Sure.
Mrazek and Elliott Friedman, or Merrick and Elliott Friedman say they will be better. They won't be a playoff team, but they'll be better. Maybe Kane elevates them to a playoff team. That's one scenario I think of. I also think the New Jersey Devils are a possible landing spot for him. They're going to have PK Subban's $9 million coming off the books. If the Hawks retain half of Kane's salary, that's $5.25 million. So they can easily fit him in. They've got, obviously, they went out and got Dougie Hamilton. They could trade some assets to give the Hawks. They don't have any additional picks like the Sabres do, but they have a young core there that could be on the rise. So that's my scenario. My two scenarios are out east with teams that are looking to be on the rise. Because like everyone said, Kane's game, theoretically, he's such a stout, strong player, and his game really hasn't trailed off. So if they're like a year or two away, let's say they get Kane for this year, and then Kane resigns there, and then maybe by when he maybe starts to tail off a little bit, they're in the playoffs. That's my thought process on it. Obviously, I've thought about the Rangers too, but I don't think they can make it work.
Yeah, you're on the rise methodology, like that thinking. I'll go a different route. I'll go the win now mode, and I'll stick to the East too. And I am going to go with the New York Rangers. It will be tough for them to make it work. And the other thing that the Hawks need to be careful about is what they ask for in return. They're probably going to have to eat 25 to 50% of Patrick Kane's remaining $10.5 million salary, which is north of $5 million. But then the return, a lot of people are saying that the Rangers are disenchanted so far with Lafreniere, which is possible. They're not seeing that, hey, as a first overall pick, he might not be where he is now. We have talked in previous podcasts about let's not just pick up former first-round picks if they're not working out.
Right.
However, Reichel, Lafreniere, Doc, I can kind of see that happening. You could still get a first-round pick from the Rangers. You can get a conditional first-round pick for the following year. I don't think you should make any move without asking for at least a first and a conditional first as well to anybody. To anybody, especially after what you just got for Hagel.
Exactly. I think you're asking for at least 2 first rounders, a second rounder, maybe a prospect, especially if they think Kane can sign long term, because I think if you trade him, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm wrong. If they trade him, I think then they can start negotiating an extension right away with him. The team because he's on the last year of his deal, and so you can start negotiating right away.
So then the other team I'm going to go with in this trade scenario is the Boston Bruins, and here's why. The Boston Bruins. Boston, obviously, I live out here, so I've been thinking about this a lot, and I probably follow the Bruins just as much as I follow the Blackhawks. The Boston Bruins are going to need to find a way. They need to re-sign Patrice Bergeron, and they will. He'll come back. Bergeron will come back. I have no doubts. He's a UFA this summer. Despite Jake DeBrusk's trade requests, they just signed him to a 2-year extension. But he's cap controlled now, and so now he's more tradable than he was as an RFA because now you don't need to renegotiate with him. The Bruins, if they are a first-round exit this year or a second-round exit this year, which is possible, I think they're as dangerous as anybody in the East. The East is – anyone in the East could come out of there. I think the East is – everyone's known who the 8 playoff teams are going to be for months.
The East is set, yeah.
And other than maybe the Washington Capitals, if someone said – any of these 7 are coming out of the East, I would be like, yeah, that might happen.
I would like Tampa not to come out of the East, so we can get a higher draft pick.
Tampa's the one. Tampa looks tired. I think Tampa looks really tired, and sure, Vasilevsky could steal it, but at the same time, I mean, they look from just an erratic COVID schedule and back-to-back cups. They look exhausted right now. They just don't. They don't quite like themselves. But I'm going with Boston because it's Jake DeBrusk could be in that package, could be a good piece for rebuilding. Fabian Lysell their 2021 first-round pick. You ask for him. You ask for DeBrusque. You ask for him. You retain a little salary. You ask for their first-round pick in 2023, and you ask for their first-round pick or a conditional first-round pick in 2024. That should be enough. I've mentioned this to some of my Boston buddies for Patrick Kane, and they've gone, that's it? Like, that's all you'd want? So maybe there's more there if they did. But Boston is bringing back, they're going to bring back Bergeron.
Yeah.
Marchand's getting older. He's still dynamic.
Still a meatball, too.
Still a meatball. Pasternak's still a great offensive player.
Yeah.
Coyle's still in the mix. They've got McAvoy, who's great. They just committed more money in that trade to Lindholm when they got him from Anaheim.
8 years.
Exactly. Yeah. Swayman seems like a number one goalie. If they are bounced in the playoffs this year and don't win a Stanley Cup for that matter, Don Sweeney needs to make a decision with his aging core. Are we going for this or not?
Right.
And so Patrick Kane on a line and that offense and that power play with anybody lights out.
Yeah.
And I honestly, if they made that move and they figured that out, I think the Bruins win 1 or 2 cups maybe.
Do you think, though, because the East is so stacked, maybe Sweeney – because think about it, Pittsburgh's still hanging around, right?
Still hanging around.
They're getting older, but they're still hanging around. Gunsel, Malkin, and Crosby still a big formative top 3. The Caps, like you said, are probably – they got 1 or 2 more runs in them. And Tampa, like they're in total win now. Like they're going to be like the Blackhawks are now once their run ends because they're bankrupt. They're going for broke by trading all their first round picks.
Sure.
So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what Sweeney does. Don Sweeney's made some really savvy moves since he's taken over in Boston. Yeah. He had to clean up that mess that Peter Chiarelli left him. So, and he's able to keep them competitive and in it. So that'd be a huge move for the Boston Bruins. Like if they got him, like the odds makers and everything shifts towards Boston as being the perennial favorite to win the Stanley Cup. And then if Kane moves, is that like a big shift in the arms race? Because I mean, we saw the arms race this past trade deadline where Claude Giroux went to Florida and like literally everybody in the East loaded up with players. So
well, no, I mean it's one of those like Florida's going to be around. The Panthers are going to be around for a little while.
Yeah.
The Hurricanes are going to be very competitive for a little while.
Yeah.
And Boston needs to make that decision.
Right.
The Rangers are going to get better.
Yeah.
And so Boston is the perennial successful organization of playoff appearances. And they probably should have more cups than just the 2011. Now, the Blackhawks were the better team in 2013.
Yep.
They were. And Boston people will tell you that. Should they have beaten the Blues? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. In 2019. And then, I don't know, you just mentioned the Pittsburgh Penguins. Would it be nuts if they made a run for Kane and in the golden years of Crosby Malkin added Patrick Kane?
I mean, that'd be crazy because they just added – didn't they just add they added Rickard Rakell at the deadline.
Yeah. Right.
Like, and
but that's just a guy.
Yeah. But then adding Kane, like, Kane, Malkin, and another wing on that line are like just craziness.
Yeah.
Like that's just absurdity. But again, all these are just dream scenarios. It all depends on what Kane wants to do. And
it could be a very easy conversation. Kyle Davidson can be like, what do you want to do? And he could just be like, I'm a Blackhawk for life. Figure it out. And that's that.
And Davidson could be okay with that too. Like,
or Kane could really, throw something in there that would, would it sting if he was just like, I'm going to play out my contract and then test the market.
Yeah.
Leave for nothing. And you can't trade me even if you want to.
Here's another interesting thing that I thought of. Kane and Toews both have the same agent. So they've got to be Davidson's kind of be delicate in which, because I mean, they both got the same contracts. Like they both got the same contract, their first deal, and then the long deal they're on now. So they've kind of got to be delicate in how they handle. Because if you let's say you aggravate Toews in the process? Does that affect
Right.
what Kane does?
I don't know. I mean, I don't, they've been together for so long. I don't even know how tight they are, though. I mean, it's, they've been teammates
Yeah,
forever, but they're not line mates anymore. They just kind of.
I think I read the article about Mark Lazarus article on Jonathan Toews, which
Great read. Great
yes,
read.
if you haven't read it on the Athletic, Mark Lazarus article on Jonathan Toews was spectacular, and
Yeah.
we at the Rink are we have a love-hate relationship with Mark Lazarus's pieces, so and that's putting it
full
mildly.
credit, full marks,
Full marks.
full marks.
And
Wonderful article.
I think in the article he mentioned that like Kane and Toews were like an old married couple on the line, just barking at each other the whole time whenever they played together. So they might still have like a good working relationship with each other. I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure it's fine. It should be interesting to see what happens to Patrick Kane. If he left as a free agent for nothing and walked out the door, that would be tough.
Yes.
I mean, I guess the only positive off of that is you have him off the books while you're rebuilding, so you don't have another bulky contract. But
yeah,
I do like with both of these players and fans, this should make you feel easier about this. If any of these guys are no longer in Blackhawk uniforms at any given point in time, take solace in the fact that it is their choice.
Right.
And it's not management's choice.
Yeah.
It is not. If people want to hang Kyle Davidson out to dry if he trades Patrick Kane, or if he somehow is able to find a way to trade Jonathan Toews, fans, remember, it was their choice. It was up to them whether or not they wanted to be traded.
Right.
So,
Duncan Keith asked to leave, and Davidson made the move and got him out of town.
He said, "Fine, go." He said, "I want to be closer to my son. I want to be closer to home."
Yep.
I get it. Now, Kane loves Chicago. Loves it. He has nothing left to prove.
Yeah. No. His son's born here. His wife or his family, like this is home to him. He grew up here.
Exactly. And I mean, 3 cups, MVP, Art Ross, Conn Smythe, Hall of Famer. He's gonna
have a statue next to Jordan in the whatever that's called at the United Center.
Yep. But it's one of those like, I will go ahead and say right now, I think Patrick Kane is going to go down as the best Chicago Blackhawk of all time.
I 100% agree.
Yeah. And I understand the arguments against that. Whether you're a Hull or Makita, despite, the Bobby Hull's very checkered past as a person.
Yeah.
Strong argument for Makita playing 21 years as a Blackhawk.
Yeah.
Argument for Dennis Savard, I guess. But I think Kane's got it. I guess the question with Patrick Kane is like, does he care enough about winning again? I mean, this has got to be getting really old for him.
For sure.
All the terrible teams he's been on lately.
Yeah. And I guess another thing would be too, like when him and Kyle Davidson sit down, does he believe in Kyle Davidson's vision is another thing. Like, does he believe that Davidson's the right guy? Because if he thinks Davidson's not the right guy, then he needs to get out, whether it's he plays out his contract or leaves. But if he has some sort of optimism or something that, I mean, if Peter Chiarelli was the one talking to him, I'd be out the door. But like I said earlier, the optimism that Kyle Davidson's shown, I think it was on Puck Soup, they talked about how Davidson spoke at the GM meetings. And rookie GMs, it's like an unwritten rule that rookie GMs are not supposed to speak at their first GM meeting. And he did it anyways because he wanted to. He's one of the 32 general managers in the league. And they decide what their league's going to be about. So he had enough foresight maybe to – I don't know what he said. I mean, that's obviously like a state secret. But just, what he said and – I don't know. It's going to be
I mean, the other thing to your point about his vision and if he believes in Kyle Davidson, I don't think it's unrealistic for Patrick Kane to still be producing at a relatively high level 3 or 4 years from now.
Right.
He could be. Could be. We see guys play into their young 40s now. Will he tail off a little bit at some point? Probably. But I mean, it's like if the Hawks are able to figure this out, he takes a pay cut, and in 3 or 4 years they're ultra competitive again. Could he be part of that mix? It's not impossible.
No, I mean if they hit, they have 2 second-round picks this year. They have 2 first-round picks next year and the year after. So like that's 4 potential top-tier guys in your, because the Hawks aren't going to be good. So their first pick is going to be relatively high.
Well, let's not forget if the Wild make it to the conference finals this year.
Right. The Marc-Andre Fleury, becomes a first-round pick. So if you could, all you got to do is hit on those picks and then just develop those guys along. I mean, look at, I make the argument, everybody keeps like bashing Davidson that he doesn't know that he's not going to be able to draft well, and the Hawks haven't drafted well, and so on and so forth. We don't know. He's never drafted before. He's never been the guy calling the shots. How many people said Steve Yzerman didn't know what he was doing? He was just a great player before he took over in Tampa.
Yeah, I mean, we have no idea if he can draft or what scouting's going to be doing, or we'll find out.
We literally have no idea. Like what we've seen this far, for me personally, I'm optimistic. I mean, trading Brandon Hagel took a bunch of guts. It took a
I think that's it's hard to, it's too early to maybe say who won that trade, but my money's on the Blackhawks on that one. Because even if they win a cup, I mean, he might not even be a 20-goal guy in Tampa.
Right. He was literally, they wanted him to be the equivalent of what Blake Coleman was for him a couple years ago. Then they had to pay.
He's not going to have those power play opportunities down there. You know, he's not going to have the minutes.
He's not going to be on the same line with Patrick Kane or Steven Stamkos or Kucherov. So, like if they can, and like Eric Andrews has said on this podcast multiple times, if you can't find a guy in the end of the first round that equals the talent level of Brandon Hagel, then you're not doing your job right.
Yeah, right. I mean, all those people that are just like, oh, it's just a late first round pick is just another Brandon Hagel. Nonsense.
Brandon Hagel was a 6th round pick that didn't get signed. Everybody keeps forgetting.
And you got to get in the game. You got to get lottery chips. You got to play the lottery every now and then. So
everybody's like, oh, you need to make, or people are like, oh, you need to make hockey trades. So we talking about Boston. We talking about Boston, right?
Right.
DeBrusque was drafted. All their core guys that they have were all drafted by them. They just stayed. Crosby and Malkin were both drafted by Pittsburgh. They just had the longevity. Like Kane and Toews were drafted by the Blackhawks. You don't find guys that carry your franchise for years and years and years and making a trade.
No.
You find them in the draft.
Yep. And you got to get lucky. I mean, Dale Talon, when he drafted those two, we're still talking about them. You know, they were first round draft picks. They were top 5 picks, Kane and Toews, in 2006 and 2007, respectively. It's 2022, and we're still talking about these guys.
Right.
And we're very fortunate, lucky.
Yeah, we are.
To have that kind of run.
If they would have taken James Van Riemsdyk instead of Kane.
Yeah, and at the time, I was actually pulling for that.
Right, he was the consensus number 1. Like everybody thought Van Riemsdyk would be
a bigger guy, college hockey player, et cetera. Yeah. So good stuff tonight, Sean. Any parting words of wisdom, thoughts?
What's your take on the Frozen Four? You're going, so
Frozen Four.
Let's talk about a little college hockey.
Yeah, Michigan's been a little shaky. That Quinnipiac game when they were up 4-0, and then Quinnipiac caught them, made it 4-3, and then they pulled their goalie with 4 minutes to go when they had Michigan on the ropes, which is a really interesting call. Michigan got an empty netter right away, and then the game kind of got wacky after that and ended 7-4. Playing a really good Denver team out of maybe the best conference in college hockey. So that game can go either way. Minnesota State was number 1 wire to wire until the last 2 weeks of the season when Michigan got that overall number 1 seed. You know, Minnesota State has a lot of older hockey players too, grown men, guys that played a couple years of juniors before jumping on board. So, I mean, you know, their players are 23 years old, their best players. You know, and then Michigan's best players are the younger, the 18, 19, maybe 20s. And that does make a difference, can make a difference. They're also playing University of Minnesota, who's had a hell of a year in the Big Ten, who's given Michigan a lot of fits.
Yeah, Michigan and Minnesota played in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah. So I am going to go, though. I am going to go with University of Michigan against Minnesota State. I'm going to go with my head and not my heart. I think it's going to be Minnesota State beating Michigan with suffocating D and great goaltending in the final. They're going to win that game 2-1. They're going to get 2 early goals. Michigan's going to battle back. They're going to weather the storms. And Minnesota State will walk out of there with their first national championship. Now, do I want that to happen? No. I want blue all the way. Let's go Michigan. But it's also, I think Michigan's just had such an interesting season with all of their guys going to World Juniors and then the Olympics. And
right. They really haven't played together as a team.
No, they haven't. So they've kind of been all over the place. So it's, so it'll be interesting to see. They'll have their hands full with Denver. They will. And I think this is going to be a very good Frozen Four. But I'm going to go Michigan, Minnesota State edging them 2-1 in the final.
I don't know as much about the Frozen Four. I've listened to Chris Peters' podcast a couple times recently, trying to educate myself. But it's his prediction. I'll just give Peters' prediction was Minnesota, Michigan, and he had Michigan winning it. So that's the prediction I'll go with. I'll go with
all Big
Michigan.
10 final.
I'll go Big Ten rematch, and I will go with Michigan, Minnesota, and then I hope the Blackhawks sign the forward from Minnesota, who is an undrafted free agent, and get him into the fold.
Love it.
I would love that.
I like it. Well, awesome. Well, thank you very much, folks, for joining me and Sean tonight.
Yeah.
Just hanging out. Always a good time to catch up, Shawnee.
It is. It really is.
Yeah, we're going to do this again soon. We'll talk about the Frozen Four next week. And we are going to do a deep dive on my buddy, Dylan Strome, and his future in Chicago. And a lot of people all over the Twitter universe saying, sign him long-term. He's a fit, blah, blah, blah.
He's going to get paid, whoever does. 20 goals, career high.
He might. Restricted free agent, though. The Hawks have all the cards on this one. They can do whatever
they could move his rights. But yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. Will there be a taker? Will there be a strong suitor for his rights? That's the question. So we're going to get into that. We can bat that around for quite a while. That'll be.
Oh yeah, I'm going to get my homework done on my Dylan Strome.
Awesome. And we're gonna take a closer look at Lucas Reichel and dip into the prospect pool a little bit further. Lucas Reichel's been called back up, the 2020 first round pick of the Blackhawks, who's had a really good season in Rockford. He's had a great season in Rockford, and he's been in the right place. Thank you, Kyle Davidson, for leaving him down there and letting him develop. Let's see what the kid can do. I really hope he gets his first goal. At some point.
I would like that.
I think they've got some skill there, and I still think there's a future for Reichel within the organization. So,
and then maybe talk about Alex Vlasic. Like hopefully
Vlasic will be fun. Yeah, we'll get into him.
Hopefully he plays a little bit more.
Hopefully he plays more. We'll get into Regula. Alec
your guy.
Regula, a product of the Cranbrook School, who I think is great.
You've been high on him for a couple of years now. And
so we'll dip into the prospects because, folks, we're going to be seeing a lot more of these kids next year. That's for sure. So until we meet again, I'm Andy Campbell. Shawnee,
I'm Sean
great seeing you,
Fitzgerald.
buddy.
Good to see you too.
Good to see you both. Take care, folks. Have a great night. Go Hawks.
You too. Go Hawks.